Welcome again to The Man Who Woke Up the Buddha. This is Season 2, Episode 15, Sid Determines Which Way is Up. Previously, Sid and Leila continued their difficult discussion about how unconditional acceptance relates to the idea of there being good and bad, higher and lower, and Sid found himself unable to fully express the Buddhist perspective. It's complicated. Sid's conversation with Leila had indeed been quite a test of his unconditionally accepting Buddha nature, both humbling and emboldening at the same time. But his morning ritual the next day helped restore his transcendent equanimity. Just like a boss who gets to work early to make sure an unreliable employee arrives on time, Sid liked to be in position at least 15 minutes before the sun was scheduled to appear. As far as he was concerned, you couldn't trust a blinding mishmash of radioactive explosions to rise all by itself. There were too many variables. And the idea that the sun is just another star? Get over yourselves, astronomers. So he woke up a little after 5 a.m. as usual, went to the porch, tilted up his recliner, reached over, and grabbed the mahogany handle of his antique iron and brass sextant, and raised it to his eye. Sid loved the sextant. A 60th birthday present from his grandchildren, heavily subsidized by their parents, it provided him with endless entertainment. He never tired of using it to determine precisely how high things were above his ever-changing horizons. For example, the top shelf of his liquor cabinet was 10 degrees above the center of the TV screen. The cell tower southeast of the lake was 30 degrees above the top of his toes when he stretched full out on the recliner. And his second-floor office was about 15 degrees above the lettering on the front window of his coffee shop. Di drew the line at his sitting up as she got into bed in order to determine how high her breasts were above the horizon of her knees, even after he insisted it was something he needed to know to prevent himself from making a serious mistake. Still 22.5 degrees, he'd say, in a fake whisper as she turned around. This morning, the nipple he was focusing on was the tip of a small hill to the northeast, with a cluster of spruces at the very top that the sun had risen directly over the day before. Since it was past the solstice, he figured it would be rising further south each day to make the days shorter. Or maybe the sun was just setting further south. Or maybe the day would be shrinking from both sides, so it would be rising further north and setting further south. Or the other way around. It was confusing. Besides, if it were the spring, they'd be going the opposite ways as the day got longer. Of course, if it were the solstice, it might come up at the same time 2 days in a row. Or maybe that's only at the equator. Sid liked puzzling over questions like this. Tell me about it, the Buddha thought. Next, you'll be making up Zen koans. Gee, I might enjoy some of those one-hand clapping Zen questions, Sid thought, especially on cloudy days. Sid also enjoyed listening to the birds as he waited for the blindingly bright guest of honor. The thing about birds, he thought, is they find their song and stick with it. Mantras. Now that wasn't a bad idea, the Buddha reflected, although it might be better to do ones that are in your native language. Sid had heard of mantras, of course, being the Buddha and all, but he thought it was a little dangerous to say something over and over in another language. Who knows what people in other countries might be tricking you into saying? Like maybe Hare Krishna was a prayer to some Krishna guy in one language, and the description of a rabbit species in another. And Om? What the hell does that mean? He reached for his cell phone and looked it up. A polysemous symbol representing a sacred sound, seed syllable, mantra, and invocation. Polysemous? Sounds like a description of sperm whales who like to sleep around. It's not what it says, it's how you say it, the Buddha sighed, feigning despair yet again that his current incarnation would ever get with the program. Maybe it's how you say it, Sid thought. Still, he'd prefer to have his mantras in English. And, as the Buddha, he figured it was his job to decide what they should be. He had heard about affirmations like, every day is a miracle and love is all around me. But if every day is a miracle, he thought, then all of life is a miracle, so there's nothing to compare it to. And if love is all around you, then where does hate hang out? He preferred mantra that had a little more gravitas, whatever that was, like Muhammad Ali's I am the greatest, or song lyrics like Let It Be, whole lot of love, or give peace a chance. Knocking on heaven's door would be perfect, especially considering his current condition. But he had to admit, it might be a little long for chanting. And then there are all those great movie lines, Sid thought, continuing his meander down memory lane. Like, "May the force be with you," or "Make my day," although the context of that one was a little problematic. Of course, to impart his teachings about acceptance, he had to affirm things that sounded, as Leila would put it, bad. Okay, how about sympathy for the devil, he thought, or don't fear the reaper, or even both sides now. Then he remembered that in some movie, Marilyn Monroe had said, "Nobody's perfect," which was a very acceptable, all-accepting mantra. And after all, Marilyn was a goddess of sorts. Are we done yet? The Buddha wondered. Wait, there's more, Sid thought. The best mantras come from cartoons. Popeye's transcendent, "I am what I am," or Fred Flintstone's sacred, "Yabba Dabba Doo," or Scooby-Doo's "Scooby-Dooby-Doo." Enough already, the Buddha thought. Beep beep, Sid thought. Oh well, better see what the sun's up to. Hi-ho, it's off to work we go. There it is. Sid quickly reached for the sextant, checked the angle, and shook his head when he saw it was still more than 30 degrees above the horizon, just like the day before and the day before that. That damn mountain is in the way again, he thought, realizing immediately that the thought didn't live up to his acceptable standards. It's not just the mountain's fault, he thought. You'd think the sun could find some way to come up at the same time everywhere. What happened to unconditional acceptance? The Buddha thought. I guess that's not very accepting either, Sid thought, before becoming enmeshed in another conundrum. If the sun rises and there's nobody to see it, does it cast a shadow? Does it even exist? Fortunately, before Sid went off on more tangents they hadn't taught in high school geometry, Dai came out to get him. At last, the Buddha thought. Time to go, big guy. Why, where? The sun's barely up. Don't act dumb. I know, you're not acting. To your first radiation treatment. And you don't need to bring that sextant. How will I know they have the right angle? That's why they give you a mask and make sure your head doesn't move. What's up, Doc? What's up, Doc? What's up, Doc? Thanks again for listening to The Man Who Woke Up the Buddha. By the way, I have a new offer for new paid annual subscribers. After much negotiation, Sid and the Buddha have graciously agreed to answer one profound spiritual question for anyone who signs up for an annual paid subscription. Go to davidblistein.substack.com and click subscribe now for details.